is inclusive education? And why is it so important? Inclusive education is a fundamental right for all learners in South Africa. It promotes equity, values diversity, and creates opportunities for every student to thrive. So this approach transforms our educational system, fostering a more just and inclusive society. So now, with today's presentation, I want us to look at how are we then able to support inclusive education practices in South African schools and ensuring quality and equal opportunities for all. Okay, as we move my second slide. With the second slide, it with the second slide, it kind of defines what inclusive education is. Some people might say inclusive education is equitable access, whereby all learners participate and learn regardless of differences. And this is what we are striving for with these practices. This includes adapting a curricula and providing necessary support services. Some people might define inclusive education as valuing diversity, whereby each children's unique strengths and perspectives are recognized and appreciated. And by doing this, we foster a rich learning environment for all. Again, some might say it's a collaborative environment where inclusive spaces where all members feel respected and valued. And by doing this, we are able to promote cooperation and mutual support among students and staff. So now, in the previous years, we have seen South Africa introducing different policies in order to support inclusive education practices. In the past years, we have been introduced to the South African Schools Act, whereby it was introduced in 1996. Again, we were introduced to SIAS policy, whereby it was introduced to us in 2014. And lastly, White Paper 6, just to mention a few of the policies. So now, with all these policies in place, why are we still struggling? Why are we trying to support and improve inclusive education practices in our schools and education? What could be the reason? For me, it comes down to implementation. We have these great plans, ideas on paper, but now the problem is, how do we go about implementing all of this? How do we then take action and make sure that everything comes through? For an example, we have South African Sign Language. This was now officiated and recognized as the 12th official language. But is there implementation? Is there strategies and practices being implemented and put into place for it to be out there? No, we are still struggling. And not only is implementation playing a big role in all of this, but again, communication. The government, the departments come through, they come through with policy frameworks. They go into schools, they initiate, they introduce these frameworks, but then what happens? Do they come back? Do they monitor the progress? Do they write down the data? Do they come back and check if there were challenges regarding the new practices that were implemented? So two of those are the most factors that we will find when we are referring to inclusive education with regards to practices. How do we then improve this? How then we then make sure that we have equal and quality education across South Africa? As I move, like I said, these are only a few policies that were implemented in the past years. There are a lot of policies. These policies were introduced to make learning accessible, to create a diversity, to make sure that there is equal and quality education for people and students who need that. So now again, I'm coming to the fact and asking myself, if we have this, why are we still struggling with improving and making sure that these practices are then included in our South African schools? And because of such that is happening, then we see inclusive education is faced with challenges, barriers. And to name a few or a couple of these barriers, in the second slide, it says accessibility. Barriers to inclusive education, it's the accessibility. The physical and learning environments may not accommodate all students. This includes lack of ramps, assistive technologies, or adapted learning materials. Secondly, discrimination. Prejudice can lead to unequal treatment based on differences. This may manifest as inclusion and lowered expectations for certain students. Lack of resources, limited funding, and supports hindering inclusive practices. This affects the provision of specialized equipment and support staff. We see where there is limited funding, we don't have teachers who are well trained to support all learners. It really hurts to see that the barriers to all of this when with regards to inclusive education. So now how do we then move forward in supporting and improving inclusive education? Like I said, implementation of the policies that are there. The policies are already there. It's how are we going about implementing, making sure that these practices are indeed effective, going back and checking where can one fix, how can we add on what already we have. So now comprehensive policy implementation, ensuring thorough implementation of existing inclusive education policies. It's very, very important. And with that, it's making sure that communication is there with all the stakeholders included, the teachers, the departments, the principals, even parents are included in all of this. Secondly, how can we support and improve these practices? It's resource allocation. Increasing funding for inclusive education initiatives. Making priorities with regards to equitable distribution of resources across all schools. Instead of saying this is allocated to 1 through 3, but try and make sure that there is equalness across all schools with regards to allocation, funding, and what are we funding? Sometimes we tend to see that the department it's funding things that are not that important. So instead, let's try and allocate funding for inclusive education initiatives and putting it out there and making sure it becomes top priority. Thirdly, teacher training and support. You might find in most of the schools, teachers are not well trained. They don't know how to go about helping the learners out there. With South African Sign Language, with the shortage of skilled teachers, the department just employs teachers out there without even considering if the teacher is indeed qualified to come through and stand in front of the kids and start giving out lessons. You find that in such instances, the kids now in classrooms are the one now doing the teaching, because now the teacher must learn. How then is that considered good practices when we are talking about improving and supporting this inclusive education in schools? Community engagement, very, very important. Awareness, I believe, awareness, increasing awareness out there through workshops, through it could be just being at school and having those 5-minute breaks whereby kids just come through, parents just come through, and we discuss the difference and the diversity of how different people are and how can we go about empowering, encouraging, and celebrating all of that. Inclusivity, including everyone, regardless of disability, regardless of their social, economic background, regardless of the differences, knowing that we are all equal and we deserve the same equal opportunities across the education spectrum. So to foster partnerships between schools, families, communities, and to promote awareness and understanding of inclusive education benefits. It's heartening when they talk about including partnerships between families, schools, and communities, because in most cases, children with special needs, you would find that in their region or in their provinces, there are no schools to accommodate them. So they have to go outside their region. They have to go outside their provinces to get quality education. And with that being said, the families are not there. That alone, they are isolated. Communities are not there, because you might find in most cases where the school is at, the community surrounding the school, the children are not even attending that schools. So how then do we go about supporting, improving this inclusive education? Just by naming a few. There's so many ways where we can support, where we can improve inclusive education practices. Sitting down with our little ones and making them aware that we are such a diverse culture, whereby if a person is different, it doesn't mean we need to single that person out. Taking the differences and making it a beautiful thing. That on its own, it's one way that we can make sure that we include our little ones in supporting and improving such practices. And again, addressing socio-economic disparities. equitable resource access, provide learning materials and technology. How do we do that to all students? Ensure equal access to quality educational resources across all communities. In the rural areas, if you go there, you would still find that the autism spectrum, they know nothing there. It's still a taboo there, whereby there are no resources. They don't even know how to go about getting resources or information with helping this spectrum. So by providing learning materials and technology to all students in an equal, fair access would help across all communities. Targeted support programs, implementing programs addressing specific needs of marginalized communities, offer additional academic support and mentorship opportunities. And lastly, fair participation opportunities, ensuring that all students can participate regardless of financial constraints. How can we then do this? We can have free field trips, sponsorships from the departments coming through and making sure that events, activities are covered for those students who are not able to financially be there and provide for such events. So those are some of the improvements, supports that we can try and achieve or try and include when we are talking about inclusive education practices. Okay. So how then do we support students with diverse needs? How can we support students with diverse needs? Talking about individualized education programs. Develop tailored learning plans for each student. It might take forever, but from where we are standing at right now, developing such tailored learning plans for each student would be the best way going forward. This would then address specific needs and set achievable goals. Secondly, assistive technology. Provide tools supporting learning for students with disabilities. Most of the rural schools are still struggling with this. We have schools whereby they are catering for South African Sign Language, deaf kids, but they are not enough supporting material for them out there, including screen readers, speech to text software, and specialized input devices to help support students with diverse needs. And lastly, differentiated instructions. We are all different. We can't use one method of teaching and believe that one method of teaching can cater for all the kids out there. So implementing teaching methods catering to various learning styles, adapt content, process, and products to meet diverse students' needs, that on its own would be a great step in supporting students with diverse needs in the future. I talked a little about having skilled teachers out there who are trained to teach and cater for the diverse learning needs that we come across out there. So, fostering teacher preparedness. How can we do that? Through three stages: pre-service training. How? By incorporating inclusive education principles in teacher preparation programs. Practical experience in diverse classrooms. We go out there, we go to universities, we sit behind the desks. We are told how to become teachers, but we need more practical experiences about diverse classrooms, about the autism spectrums, dyslexia, how to deal with deaf kids, how to deal with kids who are not able to see and are using Braille to learn. Secondly, professional development, providing ongoing training to enhance the teacher's skills and knowledge. This is very, very important because throughout the year, teachers are provided with only a minimum of 2 training sessions per year. And then there is never a let's go back. Let's go back and see if they are indeed implementing what they were told in these workshops, in these training workshops. So workshops on latest inclusive practices. It's a very, very important. And lastly, mentorship programs, paired experienced teachers with those new inclusive education. It's hard. It's hard to begin in a new school or in a new place. And when you get there, you have no idea how to go about actually implementing all these practices that you were introduced to in your college or university years, or practical experiences during the university study years. So now pairing with an experienced person would help indeed a lot to guide and provide what has helped them throughout these years. And I cannot stress the importance of regular feedback and support sessions. Teachers feel so overwhelmed. They are taken to trainings. After trainings, they are told, now you need to implement whatever you were given throughout the training. But does the department come back and check, do feedback, check, is there a way or a challenge, or is there something we can add on what you learned in those training workshops? Support sessions. I believe support sessions should be more than twice in a month. It's just too much for somebody to go into a workshop, come back, be expected to now implement everything you have learned without any regular support system, without any feedback, or coming and just checking the progress of everything this far. And then again, adapting curriculum and pedagogy. Universal design for learning. This is how we can then improve inclusive education practices, create accessible learning materials and environments, provide multiple means of presentation, expression, and engagement. Somebody was saying that with the deaf community, they are so secluded. They are not there. It's really that you would find a deaf person while walking to the mall or to the clinic or somewhere. So by us creating engagement, providing multiple means of representation and expression and engagement with these communities, including them when adapting their curriculum, would help a lot. Again, differentiated instructions offer multiple ways to access content and demonstrate learning. We can't say we have been using this method of teaching or learning style, and this is the one that we will use going forward. We must learn to adapt new teaching strategies to meet individual students' needs. You might find a deaf child or a deaf student who also have dyslexia. So now it's no longer about being able to sign, but now being able to offer strategies that will meet that child's needs. Thirdly, collaborative learning. Encourage students to work together and support each other. Not only students, but our little kids at home. Promote peer tutoring. Just entice them to have a deaf friend, to be out there and support if they see a different person. Just ask them to join them, to play with them and learn more and just engage more with them. Promote peer tutoring and cooperative learning projects. So those are some of the things we can do to improve these practices to make sure that we ensure quality and equal access across the nation. And lastly, cultivating an inclusive school culture, respectful communication, promote open dialogue among school community members, use inclusive language, and encourage diverse perspectives. Collaborative decision making. Since we are dealing with different needs, we need to bring in different communities when taking decisions, when making decisions. Involve the parents, involve the students, the families, the staff in shaping inclusive practices. How can we tackle this? That could help a lot instead of just sitting there and thinking and making the decision making on our own. Create communities and forums for shared decision making. Most communities out there, the deaf community out there, the autism spectrum community out there, the hard of hearing communities out there, we need to share forums for them, to include them in decision making. And that will help a lot in improving and making sure that we include inclusive education practices in our schools and communities. Building relationships. By building relationships, we foster a sense of belonging for all students. Implement buddy system and mentorship programs. That would be nice for everyone out there. And lastly, celebrating diversity. It is okay to be different. Recognize unique contributions of each community members. It is okay to be different because it's what makes us different, to be a colorful rainbow nation. Organize cultural events whereby we celebrate the diversity, we celebrate the uniqueness of being different and diverse. And let's learn about these diversity across different communities and inclusive celebrations throughout the year. There are not enough inclusive celebrations throughout the year. And by doing that, we are just including them in the celebrations that we have on the calendar. And that on its own, it's a nice thing to do. So these are some of the strategies we can implement to improve inclusive education strategies, practices, and ensuring that quality education is achieved throughout the nation. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was very interesting. Now we're going to open the floor. Does anybody have any more questions? Any questions that you want to ask? You can open the floor because we've got about 20 minutes where we can have a bit of discussion, questions. Okay. Well, we did have a question from Mary. She asks, how do I approach Isikosa parents who does not believe that there's anything wrong with their child when the child is very clearly autistic and is struggling? How would you approach that?
It's very difficult
I know,
for
yeah, I know in quite a few cultures there's still like quite a stigma around mental health.
yes. It is. It is different with cultures. One thing is that try and sit down with the mommy. Try to show the mommy that it's okay to have an autistic child, but then the child doesn't need to suffer because now I don't want to say the mommy is being ignorant, but because the mommy doesn't fully understand why is the child like that. But I would say it will take a time with the culture of isiZulu, isiXhosa, how they do things. It's different across cultures. So for me, it's just every day, take a second, sit with the mommy, just talk to the mommy, try and understand why is the mommy being this difficult. What could be the case behind the mommy not realizing that the child indeed needs support in eating habits?
I think there's also people take it very seriously when they're like, a teacher will say, oh, there's this issue with the child. They'll take it very personally as like saying, sorry, your child's not good enough, is what they feel like the teacher's saying to them. When actually there's lots of people that have these issues that have gone on to be very, very successful, hugely successful. And I don't think that those people are highlighted enough. I think also maybe just show that, oh, these are these other people that have this issue and they are hugely successful, but they're only successful because they received the help that they needed.
And again, by creating awareness, I don't know if the parents are aware that the child is autistic. By having workshops at schools, workshops can then the workshop it's based on being autistic, and how does then this affect their eating habits. So Awareness. Let's try there. Let's try and have increased awareness at school, probably workshops for the parents, and maybe that could help.
Uh, Amira says, I hope I said your name correctly. I'm so sorry if it's wrong. We experienced many children that show symptoms of ADHD. I know these symptoms as I have an ADHD child as well. Other than referring the parents to the psychologist, what can we do as a teacher? So how can she adjust the way she does things in class basically to help the ADHD child?
Oh, um, with
Very
an
complicated.
yes, with an H ADHD child, it's a very complicated um task because now their concentration span is not there. They're forever fidgeting. So, and you don't want to single them out by saying you will sit here, but I will say one-on-one session with the child. I know it's taking up time, but try at least to say, today I'm going to sit with you and I'm going to work. We're going to go through the work together.
Um, like Wendy just posted in the chat, there are resources like with pamphlets and information about these things that you could share to the parents. So if
Mhm.
you feel the child has is on the spectrum with either ADHD or autism, because it's all on the spectrum, you could share these booklets with them, print it out, share it with them, and that could help them understand basically with the resources. And these are resources on the Twinkle sites. They're here in the chat if you want. Um, Jennifer asks, aside from Heritage Day, what other cultural events or inclusive celebrations could be incorporated into the school environments
Besides Cultural Day.
besides Heritage Day?
Oh,
So like what sort of like cultural events or inclusive celebrations in South Africa could be incorporated into a school environment? So instead of it all being celebrated on Heritage Day, what other things do you think we could celebrate throughout the year?
maybe have a Friday, uh, one Friday in a month, whereby we come uh dressed in different attires, whereby we are learning about the different cultures and heritages we have. Let's make it a norm, maybe the last Friday of every month. We learn about the different cultures and heritages we have out there. How, what is inclusive education and the diversities of cultures we have out there. Maybe that could work and that could help instead of waiting for that one day on the calendar whereby we are celebrating and after that it's completely gone. We have now lost the meaning or it's no longer important, but rather each and every Friday, the last Friday of the month, let's incorporate an awareness around this. Let's incorporate a fun day around this, whereby you can make beadworks, you can make artwork, celebrating the different cultures and heritages out there.
I do think, adding on to that, I think that there is still, I know everyone's brings up a part of it, but I do think it is a part of our history that there's very much this feeling of, okay, this is my culture and that's your culture, and they're separate. Whereas I feel that everyone should celebrate everyone's culture, and that makes the country a melting pot because we have so many different cultures, but we're still so separated. I feel like maybe those fun days where everyone can maybe dress up in their best friend's cultural attire could help
Exactly.
further the melting pots of South Africa, basically.
Yes, and learning about the different types of food we have in the different
Yeah,
cultures.
exactly.
Yes.
Okay. I want to say Larisha. I'm so sorry if I butcher your names. I'm so sorry. According to the Department of Basic Education, when discussing a child's autism diagnosis with the parents, It is essential to approach the conversation with sensitivity and professionalism. The first step is to ensure the parent is well informed and has access to accurate, up-to-date information about autism, its characteristics, and the spectrum. So again, that comes down to booklets like there are on the Twinkle site that are up to date and are full of information that you could share with the parents to maybe lay the groundwork for you. I don't know what your opinion on that is.
Yes, yes, I totally agree with you.
Um, how can we include a learner who is diagnosed ADHD or autistic during lessons? These learners are disrupting lessons by screaming and jumping all over the place.
Um, with ADHD, autistic children, it's an issue that we need to trend carefully because oh, a lot still needs to be implemented when we are dealing with that. A lot. For instance, I know that people will place their kids on medication to suppress, but then most parents feel that that's not the correct way to go about doing that. So now, if you have a very disruptive learner in class and you are not able to give out lessons, this is where it's challenging because you are the only teacher in the class. It would work if there was an assistant, and then you can provide some work so that the assistant can take the child outside and do a couple of these activities outside with the child. Because for them sitting on a desk for a long time, it's not happening. It's just too much for them to take in. So I would say having a second person in the classroom, an assistant, being able to share the work with the assistant, maybe once or twice in the week, leave the classroom, go outside and try and do the work outside. I know it takes so much, but it might help.
Sorry, I'm muted. Ultimately, you just have to understand that while it's not normal to you the way that they're acting, unfortunately, this is just how their brain works. And there's nothing that can be done about it. You wouldn't treat a person in a wheelchair badly just because they inconvenience you because they can't walk. It's the same concept. You have to kind of be more understanding and more sensitive to the needs of the person because again, they can't help it. It's just unfortunately how their brains are. There's nothing that can be done, and there's nothing wrong with it. We just have to understand that that's just how it is, unfortunately.
And then it goes back to catering for the individual's learning needs.
Exactly.
So, like I said, maybe being in class is just too much for the little one. Maybe create activities outside. Maybe that can help.
Okay. I've shared in the chat. There's a form that'll get you your certificate. It's the feedback form for the presentation and the workshop. If you fill it all out, you should get your certificate emailed to you immediately. It's there in the chat. Let me send it again. Make sure that you click on it, make sure you fill it out, and then you'll get your certificate emailed to you, and you can have something to show that you took part in the workshop, something to show for your time. Now that we're all wrapped up, can we show with the emojis at the bottom or in the chat who would want to have another presentation like this? Anosipelo. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I also thought it was quite nice. Okay, so maybe we can have her back sometime in the future to have a more in-depth discussion about a particular topic, either ADHD, autism, and how we can tackle that. Maybe something more in depth, if she'll have us back, that is.
I will definitely come back.
Okay. Nospella, can I ask that you just stay back afterwards for a few minutes, and then
Okay.
we'll give everybody time to click on the link and fill in their form. But I think that's the presentation for today. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you everyone for your time. Remember, fill out the form, get your certificates, and then go and enjoy your evening. Go spend time with your family, watch some TV, just go and enjoy yourselves. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, everyone.